Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. Our current session is about the family tree model. I hope and expect by the end of this session you would be able to understand what does this model mean and how does it operate in terms of divisions or categorization of languages. Well, a very convenient way of representing the relationships among different varieties is in terms of a family tree model, which was developed in the 19th century, and actually it was developed to aid historical linguistics or historical studies of language. This model allows us to see how a number of varieties are related to each other in the time sequence and how different varieties have diverged from, different varieties as a historical process. As an example, I am going to show you a tree diagram, and in that tree diagram, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you English, German, Welsh, French, and Hindi languages and how these varieties can be related to each other in terms of relationships. So let us see that tree diagram. My dear students, if you look at the screen, by building a tree structure on the top of these varieties, these are the names of those languages that I was talking about: English, German, Welsh, French, and Hindi. At the top of this, this tree structure is built. We call it a tree structure. We can show that through this we can show that English is related very closely to German. As compared to this, its relationship to Welsh is distant. French is even remote to English, and Hindi is, farthest in relationship. It is quite, it is quite far away from English language. Well, I would like you to remember the placement of this Chinese. I want to talk about this. You can notice that it is not linked anywhere to this tree diagram. Well, actually, my dear students, Chinese here is added to show that it is not related at all to this tree diagram. So, it is not so that there would be one tree diagram and all the languages would come under that. It's more like making families of languages, and Chinese would not fall under this family, so it is not at all related. If one concludes that two varieties in the same tree, there is an assumption that they are both descended from the same historical changes and they have the same ancestor. So, for example, we could add the name Proto-Indo-European to the top of the tree. When the tree was made, at the top, that point is called a node. At that node, we could have written Proto-Indo-European, which means that is the parent, the grandparent, I would say, language from which, apart from Chinese, all these languages have descended. Similarly, there were, when we drew it, there were different triangle points. There were angle points where the joints were, that I said are called nodes. In the same way, we could label the node dominating English and German, where English and German connected. At this node, we could have named the variety as Proto-Germanic. So, there are grandparents, and then there are parents, and then there are, varieties that belong to the same parents. Value of this model for historical linguistics is quite debatable. Yes, in a sense, it clarifies the historical relationships among certain varieties. It also gives a very clear idea of the relative chronology of the history and the historical changes, how, from one parent language through the historical changes, there are two languages that have emerged. However, when we think of its, of this model in the present times, the advantage is that this shows a hierarchical relationship, and we can, if we want to study how, a particular language has gone through different phases of history and where does it link back in the times to which language, it helps us trace that. So if we had wished to add Yorkshire English and Cockney to this list of varieties, These are two dialects. By the way, this Yorkshire English and this Cockney are two varieties of two dialects of English. Now, at the nod where there was this English, at this whole map, the tree of the families, where was English placed? Now, where would come this Cockney and Yorkshire? They would both come under English as, equal, represented equally, and, none of them would come, above or below the other. Apart from the attraction which we have just noted, about the family tree model, it is recommended in sociolinguistics that this family tree model anyways cannot be a final solution to all the problems of, these relationships of different varieties of languages, because it is, in a sense, very gross model which oversimplifies, the whole process. It oversimplifies the relationships of different varieties. In particular, the problem is that it does not leave any allowance for one variety that influences the other variety. This is also a possibility, that there would be two varieties which would influence and create one variety that should fall under that. But this model does not allow to do that.